Have you had that moment yet? That magical VR moment where your brain suddenly realizes the potential of what you're experiencing? Have you had that moment of, oh, I'm stood in this room in real life, but it looks and almost feels like I'm in this place that I know I'm not actually standing in? If the answer is no, then you're exactly who this video is for. If by the end of this video, you're still not at least a little more interested in the idea of really giving VR a go, then fair enough. I'll be glad you at least took the time to listen with an open mind. I'm your Marder, and here's why I think you should try VR. What did I mean when I said really give VR a go? Maybe you have a headset. Maybe you've tried it at a friend's or family's house. You might have gone to a VR room out in a shopping center. Or perhaps you have never put on a headset before. Unless you own a VR headset and given it a few good sessions alone, figuring things out and doing what you want to do with no one else around telling you what to do and how to do it, I might say you haven't actually experienced virtual reality. At least in terms of what I mean when I say experiencing VR. Let me explain. Most people who use VR regularly can probably tell you of that moment when it clicked in their brains that this is an entirely new and different level of the gaming experience. Mine was all the way back in 2016. My friend and I had just got the HTC Vive, and after messing around for a while in Steam VR Home, we played the FPS game Onward. We were too scared to go into multiplayer straight off the bat, so decided on playing against the AI to start with. And there we were, side by side, clearing the map, taking names, and just having a great time in general, when suddenly we were ambushed in a train station. Instantly, I was pinned down with very limited cover, bullets whizzing past my head. I just started returning fire blindly, which is already a cool level of interaction by itself, by the way, and then I found myself with no more ammo. I called this out to my teammate who had the big brain idea of throwing a mag over to me across the firefight, which I used to reload, and there I was again, back in the fight, with a full mag, loving every second of it. And then we got domed. That's one of the many moments where VR truly shines, in my opinion. You can't get that while at someone else's house or out in public, not properly at least. If you're one of those who plays VR games regularly and have a moment like that, let us know what happened in the comments below. And while you're there, subscribe. Anyway, over the years, VR has come a really long way. We've had good games, bad games, failed releases. We've had some niche games. I guess we'll just say that. What I'm getting at is over time, a huge library of different and innovative VR games has been built. So many in fact, that I am almost certain that there is something there for everyone. You like shooters? We've already mentioned Onward, but there's also Pavlov, District Steel, Breachers, and of course, my all-time favorite series so far at least, Vertigo. I could go on about how Vertigo Remastered and Vertigo 2 are just great overall VR experiences, but I guess that's for another video. Do you like driving? You have games like Assetto Corsa, Automobilista, Dirt Rally 2, great VR driving games. Pair them with a steering wheel and some pedals, and you're off. When I've had a bad day and want to de-stress now, I like to play fighting games like Gorn, Blade and Sorcery, Hellsplit Arena. I could just let my anger out with all that glorious violence. I'm not crazy though, right? Obviously not. This is just all in-game, you know? Violence in-game. Nothing new here. Nothing much. What I'm saying is that being active, all while having fun and trying new things, is a great way of gaming. You get my point. Whichever genre you're into, there's most likely something there for you. Whether you prefer a chilled experience or a more active one, you'll probably find something to do now that there's such a large and ever-growing collection of VR games. One of the bigger differences VR has to normal gaming is the way you control and interact with the game you're playing. Interactions is another place where VR truly shines, in my opinion. It's where a VR game really captures the feel of things in order to trick your brain into feeling like you're somewhere you're not. Something as simple as picking up a can and then squeezing to crush it really puts you into that world that you're playing in. I also often think about how amazing it is that we reload our weapons in VR and appreciate the work that went into getting it to feel right. Where your traditional flat screen game is press a button and see an animation. In VR, messing up a reload is an actual thing and it's hilarious in times of panic. It's nice little interactions like these that add to that VR immersion magic. Now, of course, playing in VR usually requires getting off my ass and being quite physical. I guess you gotta be in the mood. But when that mood hits and you got the beans to burn, VR is there for you, so you don't have to leave your house and maybe interact with people outside. Speaking of beans to burn, another example of things you could perhaps try but not really experience properly without owning a VR headset are the titles of the more active type. I've heard so many inspirational stories of people setting out to get fitter and healthier with the use of VR and achieving great results. Even within what I'll call the fitness genre, there's probably something for everyone here. Rhythm games alone like Ragnarok, Pistol Whip, Against, Synth Riders, and everybody knows Beat Saber, and that's just to name a few. These VR rhythm games offer very different experiences, but all never fail to leave you feeling like you've taken one of those classes at a gym. Only difference is you get to look stupid all by yourself rather than in a room full of others. I know I often neglect going to the gym because I don't want to leave the house, so it works for me at least. There's also the non-rhythm games within the fitness genre, such as Thrill of the Fight, Creed Rise to Glory, Stride, 11 Table Tennis, and even the wacky Dragon Fist VR Kung Fu. Some of these even have multiplayer so you can knock your mates out without having to take them to a hospital afterwards. Again, something for everyone. With all the fighting, shooting, and racing, there is a big part of gaming that a lot of people take into account when asking themselves if a game is worth playing. And also a big reason why many decide that VR is just not worth the investment: graphics. For a long time, the biggest drawback in VR games has been balancing high quality graphics and optimization. Now personally, I'm not too fussed with graphics, most of the time at least. I'm the type that values gameplay and optimization over the way the game looks. Of course, nice graphics is always welcome. I will very happily turn off shadows just to get that extra 10 frames or so, even in non-VR games. But in VR, losing even a few frames per second can be a very painful thing. So painful that it has resulted in me spending more money on upgrades than I should, more often than I'd like to admit. However, we're finally at a point in time technologically where we are starting to be able to experience some mind-blowing graphical achievements. As better tools are introduced and developers get better at optimizing, things are only going to look more and more like what we envisioned VR would look like before it ever existed. Hell, we've already got some insane looking VR titles that look like they shouldn't even be running in VR, not to mention some of which look pretty damn good in standalone headsets, like the Quest 3 and even the Quest 2 for example. The level of immersion in some of these games is crazy. Speaking of games that shouldn't be running in VR, a phrase that I've heard more and more recently is, "Imagine playing this in VR." I never thought it would be possible, but some mad lads have modded normal games to be fully playable in VR. These people deserve some kind of medal. I don't know, they need to be protected at all costs. Games like Outer Wilds, Risk of Rain 2, Raft, and even Deep Rock Galactic all have VR mods that are done so well that if I hadn't heard of these games before, and you told me they were built from the ground up for VR, I would probably believe you. And that's not even it. Recently, someone who goes by the name of Praydog created the Unreal Engine VR Injector. This enables you to technically turn any game that runs on Unreal Engine 4 or 5 into a VR game. That's nuts! They've even made the process of doing so super accessible so almost anyone can find a game and start playing around with it to make it work for them in VR. This also includes the tools you need to make the games work with VR motion controllers. It's a bloody genius! Again, I really wasn't joking when I said there was something here for everyone. Now after all of this, you still might not be properly sold on VR, and that's fine. If you get the chance to, all I'm asking of you is that you really give it a go. Perhaps find the type of game you would enjoy if it wasn't in VR. Maybe ask whoever is showing you VR games if they have a particular type of game that you know you'd enjoy. Interact with things within the game in ways that you wouldn't in non-VR games. Pick something up and throw it. Eat something. Pet that dog. You might be pleasantly surprised. Really immerse yourself in the world that's being presented to you, and for a moment, allow yourself to forget that there's another real-life world out there. There's always a starting point with VR, and whatever type of game you enjoy, there's usually an entry-level game of that genre that will ease you into the process of getting used to playing in VR. I know I spent a lot of time in this video listing VR games, but here are a few that I usually recommend or show people when introducing them to VR games. If anyone has any other games that they think are great first-time VR titles, then again, let us know in the comments. I'd love to know. Now then, if you've somehow managed to sit there and listen to me ramble till now, hopefully I've sparked some kind of intrigue in VR for you. Hopefully, I've changed your thoughts on VR and why you might not have given it a chance yet. And hopefully, you go on to find that magical VR moment. If even one person watches this and goes on to at least appreciate what VR has to offer, then it was worth making this video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Stay fed and good night.